Hey, it's Dad. This is for you. Oh, I just got done doing a school thing, so I'm a little. Always makes me. I had to talk for it. You gotta make sounds, and it always makes me a little like. Well. Um, I think today. So I wanted to. I've been thinking about this. It's like so broad a topic, but it feels like important. So my thought process has been, um, you're gonna be like a legal adult soon, and like going out and doing things and sort of getting a start on all that, but we don't get to spend so much time together to be able to sort of explain the things that I think are important looking back on my life when I was that age. So I want to talk about those things, but it's a lot of things, right? Like I think what I wanted to talk about today was core values. Kind of I'm trying to think what is like the simplest, most important thing that I wish I had known back when I was your age that could have helped me get to where I wanted to be sooner. And that's like a million things. It's endless. But I think when I think about what was important to me was where do my core values come from? What defines me as a person? Like who am I really? Like if you can boil away everything else, what is left at the very end of the day? And what does that mean to how I make my choices? Right? Because you're going to be going out and making choices. Like that's adulting, man. Choices are not made for you anymore, and you have to own them. And I think that's a part of it. Like, what does it mean to be a man? I think that it's sort of related to what I think about. So, this is going to be maybe a long one. I don't know. I don't have a feel for how these go yet. But it is going to be like a lot of me sort of talking about myself, which sounds boring. But, it's the point is for this to be out there, not for it to be entertaining. Um, but so when I think about who am I, sort of like boiled all the way down to if I reduce it all the way, what is like the bottom value of everything else? Like an upside down pyramid where this is the thing that informs all the choices that come from it. And for me, at least at this point in my life, and I think going forward, is honor, which sounds cheesy, cheesy as hell, but that's also very much like explainable for who I am. Um, but what I mean by that, and this also ties in with, to me, what does it mean to be a man? Like, oh, you're an adult, you got to be a man. Or like for me, that term is gender neutral when used in that way, because my concept of the ideal man is the same for a woman. Like it's not, it has nothing to do with gender. It's about someone who conducts themselves with honor, someone who, strives to live an honorable life. And the way I conceive of honor is that at the end of the day, everything you have, including parts of your body, can be taken from you. Your freedom, every possession you have, the society you live in. The only thing that can't be taken from you and leave something else is the choices that you make. That is the thing you leave behind. That is the only thing we really own are our choices and the way those impact the world around us, right? And when I think about like when I die, however that's going to be, I have no, I have ideas. That's not the point. But whenever I die, at that moment, my story has concluded, right? Not the story overall, but my part in that story. And at that moment, I or somebody else will be able to look back over all of the choices I made in my life And who am I in that story? You know, did I do the right thing most of the time, but I had a weakness for the sauce, or was I just really shitty and sort of screwed everybody over to get what I wanted along the way? Like, who is that character once the character has been defined and the story's over? That's how I think of honor. And it may sound boring, but I want to be the the hero. I don't want to go and like save people, but I want to be at the end of my story the person who did the right thing. Like the good guy. That's that's what I want to be. Um it's what I aspire to, I guess. And that has its roots in tons of things. Um but when I think of honor, I think of that what character in the story are you? And I think maximum honor is being the good guy, right? Making the right decision even when it's a tough call or you have to give something up, but we all know what the good guy in a story looks like, right? Our culture is saturated with those stories. I know for me, a lot of my concept of that came from Star Trek when I was a kid, which combine like Star Trek and Boy Scouts, and then like put the military at the end of it, and you've pretty much got me. It's a weird combination of things, but it is very like Americana, sort of patriotic, but inclusive, like an inclusive humanist sort of idea. But for me, it was Star Trek, you know, um, Next Generation, and Picard, like the captain who was tough. Like he was tough, but he was also fair and kind. Like he understood his limitations, and he had some prejudices, but he was always willing to challenge those and change when confronted with new evidence. That's it's an honorable person, right? Like you've got beliefs, but you know, faced with something that should change your mind, you're willing to. And so that's just generally like I try to make the right call. It's not about me, it's more about the story itself. And so I wanted to pose talking about the stuff like, who do you think you are right now? What is that thing? Do you have a thing that is left at the end of the day? And if so, what is it? Like, what has informed that? I have always strived to be realistic about, man, there's so many things. The reality that we live in, like the world is a beautiful but also cruel place. It's not fair. Like, really talking about fairness only gets you somewhere on the internet, and even that is, you know, winning the Special Olympics. It's filled with as much good as it is bad, and there is no higher order. Like things can just tank. You know, progress is not guaranteed. We know that. I think a lot of people have gotten used to the idea that things will continue to get better. It doesn't have to. There's no higher order. There's no it's just a bunch of really complicated, messy animals living their lives and, you know, doing things. Like that's what it's always been. That's the thing. I think in our culture we're taught these ideas that there is some sort of reason or arc to things. But if you look at the picture from far enough away, there isn't. And that's okay. I mean, that means that we're seeing things for what they are, and we get to choose what's important to us. And we get to write that story. It's not written ahead of time. What that also means is the things that we do are important, and we need to have a vision of who we want to be. You know, I'm an influence, or have been influenced a lot by the people I looked up to growing up. Picard, Spike from Cowboy Bebop, who just seemed so like effortlessly cool in 1999 and 98. Like a lot of these things that when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, influenced me, end up becoming components of my personality. And so, what has influenced you? who do you want to be 10 years from now? What kind of person do you want to be in the story? I don't think many people think about who they want to be, because that is a choice for us. We get to choose who we are. That's one of the things that makes humans unique, is we're able to self-direct change. Maybe that's the only thing that makes us unique. I mean, not all of us do it, but we're able to if we want to. And I think the people who are reflective like that are the rare ones that are worth your time. The people who can view their own actions from outside and make a change, because that's difficult to do. That's like the difficult thing to do for adults. So I have very much ended up a boy a Star Trek Boy Scout that has a sort of very like army bend to it, and that makes sense because both my parents were military. Star Trek was a heavy influence, along with a lot of other sci-fi. The 90s was a great era for that and for the humanist values of like Roddenberry and others. And, scouting was like 12 years of my life. And when I was there doing it, it didn't really matter to me at all. I couldn't have told you that it was important then. But looking at it from 20 years later, that ended up being like all of who I am. I think in a weird way, that's what, like, especially my dad, but my parents wanted to impart on me. I just didn't embrace it at the time. And so when we're kids, we're all susceptible to the values that we're immersed in. But being able to look at the things you consume or that you're swimming in and say, what are the values that these impart on me? That's important. Being self-reflective, being able to question yourself and say, look at these things that I've done. Are these the person that I want to be? Because my actions speak truly for intent. There are some accidents in life, but usually repeated behaviors are not accidental. So if it is, you want to lose weight, but you keep not doing the thing, examine that. Why is it that, like, that's a me thing? Like, I want to exercise, I almost refuse to. And so I examine that and I think, why is it that I'm so avoidant to this activity? And I think it's because for a lot of my life, exercise was seen more as punitive or as work than as something to enjoy. So now when I have to do it, or when I want to make myself do it, it feels like it's a chore as opposed to an activity that I get to embrace and enjoy for what it is. So understanding that about myself, what do I do? Find a shortcut? No, I have to create a situation that's going to change that dynamic. And this is, my degree is in psychology. That's what I'm going for. And this sort of runs the spectrum of different methods and philosophies. But that is life, right? We have to make tough calls sometimes. And, the decisions that we make that's our story. We can say we wanted the moon, but if that's not what we did, then clearly wanting it didn't really matter at all. So thinking about those decisions, it's easy for me to be like, well, what would Jean-Luc Picard do? Obviously, I don't know in most situations, but I have like a general vibe. I mean, there are a bunch of people in our cultural stories that I look up to and I respect. And I try to model my framework after sort of the way I would imagine their stories would manifest in a situation. That way, I'm not making it up as I go, even though that's totally what I'm doing. And so at the end of the day, what is it that matters to you? I mean, for me, it's doing the right thing. I think I'm much more comfortable just doing the right thing as opposed to trying to justify being shitty or selfish. Um, and it's more complicated than that, obviously, but at the end of the day, like, that's all I can do. Um, reality on the ground. But, like, yeah, I want to be seen as someone who was good and reliable when I'm done, when my run is done, and hopefully, while my story is still developing, I can turn it into something awesome. But at the end of the day, those actions, those choices, that's what I leave behind. You know, that's the three deaths, or whatever they call it. The first death is when your body dies, your second death is when everyone who ever knew you has died. And then the third death is the last time your name is ever spoken. Our actions are what we leave behind. That's the only way we interact with the material world. And so those are, in a way, the most important things. So, what do your actions say about what you care about? And is that what you want to care about? You know, or do you want to care about things differently and you need to just change your actions accordingly? I mean, that sounds super reductive, but I mean, it also makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You know, if I keep blowing my money on like liquor or something and the kids don't have clothes, I could say, oh, I care about my kids so much, but at the end of the day, my actions say different. And if there's that misalignment, then I need to change my actions because I don't want to be that person. And obviously, you know, that's, you know, all hypothetical, but that is just the way it works. You know, you judge a person by their actions. That's the reality of who they are. And you know, in a way, it doesn't matter if they're the nicest person. If they consistently do awful things, they're not the nicest person. They're just a lot of talk. So, you know, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a man? That's someone who's honorable. You take care of the people who rely on you, whether that's in an agreement for a job, or it's your kids, or it's, you know, your teachers who are expecting you to put something in. You do your best to keep those agreements and to live in a way that does no harm to others. Well, no unjustified harm, maybe. I don't know. I guess, yeah. I'm getting too into the weeds of it. Does no harm to others while creating good. There you go. But I really wanted to take this as an opportunity to consider or to bring up, you know, the topic of what would that be for you? Um, I've talked to others, obviously, the sorceress of the woods, and hers is different than mine, which is would be expected, but it's very similar. And so it is interesting to see if someone can reduce the things they believe in to like one value at the bottom. And you know, you're still a teenager, you might not have that. Generally speaking, I don't think people really solidify on something like that until they're in their mid 20s. I think I mean, it's likely tied to brain development, which ends around 25. But I know for me, that's when it like really started to click, and then it was a process of getting good at those things. So it's not weird if you don't, but like, what would you want it to be? And if it was that, would the things you do, would your life or your choices look any different? What would those differences be? And why are they different? How do we change that? You know? So, our core values are important. I know it's, there are many of them for me, but at the end of the day, it's about, you know, living that good life, being a benefit to society instead of I don't want to be anyone other than the good guy. This is my paladin run in life, honor and all that, which I joke about, but like that's who I want to be. That's my comfort zone, is just being the person who's reliably good, who's making positive things and willing to fight for them when it comes down to it, and who doesn't bring anything negative. So, core values, the questions I put up. I'm not going to repeat them again. But that's what I wanted to talk about. This is a kind of roundabout way of getting there. So, I don't know. It's probably not the best video, but yeah. And there's interesting, the sorceress, the woodsy lady, put me onto a podcast that's been interesting about sort of morality and the way social media has influenced your generation, like yours and the littles, armchair experts, and it was Jonathan Haidt, of The Anxious Generation, which is a book. And I haven't finished the whole episode, but it is interesting because the world that you're growing up in hasn't existed before. There are no rules for the right way to do this stuff when it comes to like social media and internet access and using devices, and we're not sure what the future looks like. It's not going to be what was. I think we know that. So if you're just looking for things to think about, it's a great show to check out. I don't listen to the Armchair Experts overall, but I was recommended this episode. And, if it feels hard, it's because it is. it is hard. Like that's just how it is. I don't know if anybody ever said differently, but it just is. And you have to accept it for what it is and do your best. That's all you can do. Just do your best. Figure it out the best you can. Lean on the people who are there for you. And try not to step on anybody on your way. Because we're all in this together. So, that, I'll leave it at that. What am I excited for? Nintendo Direct. Tomorrow, Switch 2. Pre-orders open up. Pretty exciting stuff. Yeah. I am cautiously optimistic about what we're going to see. I'm hoping they blow it out of the water because I enjoy my Switch a lot as it is, and I'm ready to get something better. So, you'll probably hear about that Thursday too, when I post my, what is it? What do I call it? Perspectives, and I can't even remember the names of the things I'm doing yet. But on how to get something done. I think Thursday we're going to talk about buying a car, the car experience, getting you into a car. And my perspective on that, how we can go about doing that. There's a couple different ways, and what to expect. So, well, that's it. I'm sure you'll get a text from me after the direct. But it's an exciting week of reveals. So, But I love you. You got this. I'm here. We're all here. Something to think about. Doesn't have to be too serious. But, yeah. All right. Love you, dude.